Noble.
And I'm Lynn Burkenshaw in Las Vegas. Item 1A is time for comments from the general public. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a statement in Carson City?
I have 3 cards.
Okay, let me go ahead and read the language. The Commission welcomes comment from all persons. However, please recognize the Commission receives evidence through a formal process. The hearings or investigations for all matters that will be discussed at this agenda have already been conducted, and draft orders or memoranda have been prepared on the basis of the record created at that hearing or on the final results of staff's investigations. The Commission appreciates any feedback from the public. The comments made today cannot be treated as formal evidence. Members of the public desiring to comment, please state your name on the record. Comments can only address topics that are relevant to or within the authority of the Commission. Speakers shall not repeat prior comments made during this agenda, and comments shall be limited to 2 minutes per speaker. A speaker's allotted 2 minutes shall not be transferred to another speaker, and when the allotted 2 minutes has ended, the individual must stop speaking immediately. And for this, we actually have 2 comment sections, and I believe that we're noticed for this first comment section to be addressing the items that are on this specific agenda, and the comment section at the back end of the thing is for everything within the Commission's jurisdiction and authority. So are the folks who wish to comment at this juncture in time those who have an issue with a specific item on this agenda?
I will check in Carson City. So does anybody that I have a card for wishing to comment on an item on this agenda? If not, we'll have you hold until the comment period at the end of the agenda. So, Chairman, I don't have any comments for items on this agenda.
Okay. And in Las Vegas, any comments for items on this agenda? I have no one coming forward. Let's go ahead then and move to item 2A, which is docket 11-12025. This is the report from our marginal cost of service investigation. We had several comments were filed and reply comments, and we had a workshop where we asked a number of questions, had a very lively and helpful discussion. I think we had some significant participation by the commenters in the comments that they filed and the responses that they filed. And the upshot, frankly, is that all the parties were in agreement that we should maintain the marginal cost of service study. Each different party sort of had different tweaks to it that we've addressed in the report. But at the end of the day, given where we're at and the lengthy history we have with marginal cost of service, we don't see any basis for kind of rethinking that. Also, there had been some discussion about the possibility of having the utility file an embedded cost of service study along with the marginal cost of service study. And at this stage, we're just not sure that that's the resources necessary to do that will result in anything. The cost-benefit analysis didn't seem to pan out there. So I think that the report here is trying to make sure that as time goes along, that there may be tweaks that are necessary, but at this stage, we're just not sure that they are. And one of my big concerns had always been when I had the Sierra case, is we were in a significant overcapacity situation. I'm not sure that is necessarily the biggest concern in the future, but I do think it was a very interesting and necessary discussion given the results we had coming out of the last Sierra rate case and the results we had out of the last Nevada Power case. But I'm available to answer any questions, and the ones that I can't answer, I'm presuming Mr. Anderson is around, or Mr. Cherez is around.
Thank you, Chairman. I just have 2 comments. Actually, both to thank you. One, for letting me relive the last Nevada Power general rate case. Great fun. And 2, to thank you for taking this topic. The only observations and comments I have.
I'm done.
Okay. Then I would move that we approve the report on the continued use of marginal cost of service studies for electric utilities, adopt the recommendations in the report, and close this investigation.
Second.
Concur.
Item 2B is brought to us by Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you, Chairman. This is docket number 12-03021. It's the application of Access One for authority to operate as a competitive supplier of telecommunication services within the state of Nevada. This was filed March 16th of 2012, and This has had an interesting life, and I'm going to just cut to the point on this. Access One filed this application, which the underlying application is supported, and I recommend that we grant grant them the authority to operate it as a competitive supplier. The second component of this was that through the course of the case, staff discovered that Access One did not have a CPC and had been operating without a CPC for quite some time. Access One was not aware that they were operating without a CPC, and once staff made them aware of it, they came forward and complied immediately with all of the requirements, including late fees and penalties. And this is a judgment call on my part. I believe that Access One is sincere in not knowing that they had lost their CPC. They wouldn't have come forward and asked for an expansion of their authority if they knew that they were delinquent. And based on their good faith effort in mitigating circumstances in this case, I'm supportive of what staff's recommendation and what Access One agreed to as a $1,000 administrative fine for their non-compliance. And as I said, they filed everything and any other penalties associated with that. So I know it's rather complicated, and there are some strange issues surrounding it, and I will defer all of those questions to General Counsel. So on the substance part of it, I can try and answer questions. On the legal part, I will defer.
You know, the one question that I had, it looks like, according to the order, the CPC was revoked in 2005, and they came in 2012 for this request. I mean, at any point in time, did they have any explanation for, from 2005 to 2012, kind of a light went on and said, oh, are we supposed to file an annual report with the PUC?
I was under the impression that, and based on their testimony and the discussion that we had, that they thought someone was taking care of that. And I mean, it seems kind of absurd, you know, as we sit here, we think everyone should be paying attention to their regulatory obligations, and I think that they should. I think it was an unintentional oversight, and it was just, by the way that they reacted, oh my gosh, we've totally messed up. It wasn't even on our radar. They operate in several states. They only have 3 customers here. I just don't see it in the course of business as something that would have risen to the level of, oh my gosh, what about Nevada?
Okay, that's all I have.
Yeah, when I look at this company, I see that they're operating in 45 states, and while they may be sincere that they didn't know that they weren't paying their annual assessments or filing their annual reports, but they had to have been preparing paperwork for the other 44 states. And for there to be just some void for Nevada, I just don't know how that can go without being somebody catching that. Regardless, though, I do see that they paid all their assessments back and also the late fees, which are statutorily required. I just don't think that $1,000 comes anywhere near to the level I think is appropriate for somebody who's been operating the state for 6 years. And my understanding, talking with General Counsel's office, is that we're limited to the $1,000, that if we wanted to go above that, we'd have to go set it back for rehearing. But I just don't think that $1,000 is anywhere near appropriate. I thought it would be more along the lines of $1,000 per year that they're operating without the CPC. Because to me, while I think we should do everything we can to encourage businesses to operate in the state, for them to operate for 6 years without a license, without paying their annual assessments, and without filing their annual reports, I just don't think that's the type of business we necessarily want to have. While they themselves may not have been aware, they are still responsible for the companies that they hired to take care of their business, and obviously they weren't doing a very good job of managing that. So that's all I have to say.
Hey, Ms. Cohen, you have maybe some guidance for us on this?
Well, I guess it depends on, what I would do is, I think probably depending on how you want to go up with this, and if you want to increase the fine, you have to have a hearing, as Commissioner Noble said. So, I mean, you could deny the application, they could then reapply and then start the process over again. And then, my understanding was, and I don't know, maybe Ms. Cordova could clarify, is that they agreed to this fine in order to obtain their CPC. Is that correct?
This is Tammy Cordova. I don't want to go too far into discussions that we had with them, but they were very amenable to paying a fine in order to get their certificate. And that was, but staff didn't think it was appropriate necessarily to go that route because we wanted the commission to have the opportunity to consider this.
So as a result, they haven't been, noticed for administrative action. They have to have a hearing. They have to have their 21-day notice and everything before the agenda, which we did do for this agenda. Or you could take this, you could vote to grant the application, and then someone, a commissioner would have to bring it back to, or you could expand the scope of the docket and include a fine and start all over again with a hearing on the fine and the application. But I think the cleanest way, if you're inclined to want to fine them more, would be to just deny their application, and then they would reapply, and you could expand the scope of the docket and include the fine in the proceedings, and then you could have a hearing.
If I could weigh in.
Sure.
Yeah. My thought would be not to go through everything about whether or not they have the wherewithal to operate in the state. If there was a second proceeding, I would only want to deal with whether or not they should be fined, an additional fine should be assessed above and beyond the $1,000. Because otherwise, I think if we deny the application and ask them to come back, we have to start from square one again. And I'd rather not basically throw away all the work that's been done up to this point on this topic.
The problem is you can't really grant their application pursuant to a larger fine today.
Correct.
Yeah.
But could we grant their application or hold it in abeyance until...
You could do that. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are we noticed to do that, Jen?
You could grant it contingent on, and you can add that, because modifications you're allowed to modify. So if you wanted to grant it contingent on further proceedings, which you can set for further proceedings, you could do that, and then you'd have to have your hearing on the fine aspect of this. And then again, you'd have to bring it back to an agenda to approve whatever fine, is levied. Because what you can do is modify your...
Jan, I'm going to interject here. I'm not sure that I agree with you. And there are too many legal issues surrounding this at this point that have come to light since this order is issued. I think it would be best, before we take an action that we may or may not be able to do, I'm not sure that we can move forward with a proceeding in which we can assess a greater fine. I think that would have to come in a separate fine. Or I think that we have some legal issues to iron out before we can move forward with this. So I'm willing to withdraw this from the agenda or defer it to the next agenda so that we can get a better idea of what our legal options are. I know that our hands are relatively tied in the circumstances based on a series of circumstances that occurred in the docket. So I intend to withdraw this, and we can, or defer this until the next agenda, and we can have a better opportunity to address legal issues.
All right, that's probably a very good idea. This is also the first time that I'm aware of this particular kind of a situation's arisen before the commission and with a fine. So,
Okay, so we'll go ahead and then, Commissioner, are you going to withdraw item 2B?
Yes.
Okay.
Do I need, is it best if I make a motion on that? Or just so, I mean, if y'all want to move forward with this, that's one thing, but
I'm fine with
withdrawing.
withdrawing or deferring it to a later agenda.
Okay, I will defer this to a future agenda.
Okay, great. All right, item 2C, Commissioner Nolan.
Item 2C is docket 12-08024, and that's a petition of the regulatory operations staff for an order to appear and show cause why certificates of public convenience and necessity, licenses or permits should not be revoked, and or why administrative fines should not be imposed on certain companies that have not timely met their regulatory obligations for calendar year 2011. There were 125 companies, entities in staff's petition. Following the commission's vote to issue the order to show cause, there were 124 entities. And following a hearing and review of the evidence that was presented, I put this order together and would be happy to try and answer any questions you might have.
Any questions or comments?
I guess my question is, what was your rationale for, and how did you arrive at the dollar amount? Because it wasn't consistent with staff's recommendation. I was just curious, what was the events that led you to develop or make those determinations?
Staff's recommendations predominantly were $500 for any violation, and then an additional $500 for a repeat violation. I just, in looking at that, thought overall that was too high, a blanket across the board assessments or for the penalties. And so what I did was I looked at it, and if they came into compliance before staff filed their petition, $125. If they came into compliance before the commission voted, $250, and then $500 if they came into compliance after that or not at all. Also, if there was a repeat violation, $500. And then if you could not revoke their CPC for non-compliance, if they don't pay the fine, a double the fine. I think in most instances, except for I think AmeriGas, which they recommend a $500 fine if they didn't pay the fine, staff had recommended $250. And to me, that wasn't enough of a hammer to actually encourage them to actually pay. And then there were a few unique circumstances where I thought that there should have been a reduction from those parameters that I had set out as I was reviewing.
Okay. I guess my concern is that I thought the intent of going down this path, and we've been through so many iterations of how we handle show cause orders. We need people to file on time. And what I see this order is doing is effectively giving grace periods. And I think that defeats the purpose of the statute and the regulation, and I would rather follow with staff's rationale and deal with it that way. I mean, and then when there are mitigating circumstances, explain it in the order as I was proposing in mine, that, you know, yeah, they were late, but this was why they were late. They sent it to the Ohio Commission. Therefore, you know, we're going to take $100 off. That was kind of how I envisioned this process. So it would have been possible to propose a different draft order, particularly since I've been in Salt Lake City this week. But on that basis, it's just not envision this process. So I won't be supporting the order, but that's not to take away. I understand where you're coming from, and I know this is a lot of work, and I don't mean to be a jerk about that, but I just see it differently.
All right. This is a very thorny issue, and I'm not exactly sure which is the best way to get our carriers and our utilities to comply with the requirements. I think one of the things we do is to make sure that we understand there's going to be some consequence. And I don't know the best way to do it. I think we struggled with this for as long as I can remember. It's almost 20 years. I'm willing to try this and see if it works, and I think hearing officer's order after this sends a message as well. I think we've been pretty clear we expect people to abide by the regulatory obligations, and that frankly is a sign of whether or not you are fit for having a certificate. And I think if we see these people again, they shouldn't have a certificate. So that's fair warning. But in the interest of moving this forward and kind of moving this along, and this one, how we handle it. I do think we have to have a rational way to assess the fine. I think that this is, I'm willing to support the order because I think we need to move it forward, but I do think that we need to, and I think this order, and I think we need to send a message that if you're going to do business here, you need to be a good regulatory citizen. So, Commissioner Noble, do you have a motion?
I would move that the commission assess the fines as provided in the order and issue the appropriate order.
Second?
And I'll second.
Item 3A, Mr. Mulho.
Item 3A is docket number 1206036, which is the application of Aranex Communications, Inc. for authority to operate as a competitive supplier of telecommunications service within the state of Nevada. A draft order is included in the agenda for your consideration.
Any questions or comments?
No question?
I have none.
I would, I had a question, but maybe it's been answered. Yeah. All right, I would move we approve the hearing officer's recommendation to deny Airnex's application and issue the order.
Second?
Concur.
Item 4A, General Counsel.
Commissioners, this is the legislative update status item, and one of the supplementary materials includes all the bills that have that are bills now that we're tracking, and so with the lead attorney on each one, and so that's an update. And then also our bills, we have an update on SB 41 by Ms. Terwilliger, and then who is the lead attorney for telecom, and then also an update on SB 93, which is the, and Mr. Lamojo is the lead attorney for the electricity group. And as you notice, this particular item is noticed for discussion, for action, if you want to take it, if you just want to discuss, if you want to provide feedback, if you want to provide direction, or if you want to actually take a position. And just so you'll know, I've notified the governor's office that you may possibly want to take a position, and there's no problem there. So with that, I would, Ms. Terwilliger, if she's there, would like to discuss some amendments to SB 41.
Good morning. The only formal amendment to SB 41 is from NTA, the Nevada Telecommunications Association, and I think that's part of your supplementary material with his written comments or testimony at the legislature yesterday, as well as the suggested change to NRS 704.100, which is section 1 of SB 41. And essentially it boils down to he wants, NTA wants to move the amendment to this section of the statute. What it tries to accomplish is some relief for small-scale providers of last resort if the FCC, for example, or for instance, starts increasing the rate floors on an annual basis in order for carriers to get certain types of universal service support, which they've already done to a certain extent, and we expect that to continue, and that's what we're hearing. So any carrier who wants to avail themselves of this, because the interval is 5 years from a rate case, in order to use the more simplified letter of advice process, any carrier now will have to come in for a rate case to even start to use this more simplified process. But NTA wants that interval to be 10 years. Now, the interval is 10 years, so far as I know, everybody's going to have, that is losing high-cost loop support now will have to come in for like a clearing case as well. So it's not going to change the fact that these carriers, in order to raise the rate floor, are going to have to come in initially, but then the interval would be 10 years. And since it's a pretty substantive change, I thought I'd bring it to you all to see if you wanted to move the number at all. And Mr. Dozier's here, we staff can discuss if you want any opinions from us about that, or if you just want to, anyway, I'll leave it up to you all.
No, I want to hear what you all have to say, but I'll wait if there's questions.
And Mr. Dozier, free to step in if you want. We thought that, you know, most of the Nevada telecoms are really pretty small shops. They aren't the UIs where they're a part of a larger parent company. And so I think it will be costly. It will be an expensive process for them to do a rate case, a full rate case. And so we were willing to go a little bit beyond 5, but after 7, it gets a little stale and
I would just add, you know, it's really kind of a judgment call. What's the right interval? 5 years, 10 years, 7 years? So it really is kind of a subjective judgment, but just 10 years just to me sounds like a very long time. So, you know, 5 years seems like a pretty reasonable time, but I can see going to 7 years perhaps. Again, it's a matter of judgment, but I just think 10 years is maybe pushing it out a little too far.
Thank you.
I had a question. It would only be 5, everybody's going to have to come in and do their first full-blown rate case. And so it's only that second one where there's really the issue of whether or not it's 5 years, because nobody's been in the last 5 years, is that correct?
or 10. So
Okay. In some cases 20 or 30 years?
in some cases 20 or 30.
So, and is anticipated that the FCC is going to be raising that floor every year?
That's what the estimation was at NARUS, that they're gonna, I think it's $14 in June of this year, and I've heard that they're gonna go up to like $15.82 or something in the next cycle, the next year. I do want to say this though, that one other factor I wanted to, there are a lot of changes coming for these small scale providers of last resort. This overhaul of the Universal Service Program and the intercarrier compensation, their stuff is going to, and the push to do broadband, which, you know, how much of that will be state rate making, you know, that's a different story, obviously, but there are a lot of changes coming for these carriers, and things are going to change fairly rapidly for them, so they might have to come in for rate cases anyway. I don't know, they might try to avoid it, but I'm not sure with the level of subsidy, federal subsidy that's going down for them, they might be forced to start coming in for rate cases on their own, so I just wanted to add that as well as a factor for you to consider.
I don't think 10 years is reasonable. To me, it's between 5 and 7. And, you know, 7 only if it's, we know that the FCC is going to be raising that floor every single year. But while they might be raising it the next 3 or 4 years, it's a long ways out. And I'd almost rather keep the 5 years. And if they do start coming in 5 years and we realize that this isn't cost effective, and we can go back and revise the statute then, sort of like what we are proposing with, I think, SB 15, with the IRPs with the small water utilities, where we had them coming in every 3 years. And after the second time around, and given the economy, realized that there are instances where it's really not necessary. But given the speed with which things are changing, the business landscape for these companies, I'd rather see them come in so we know what they're doing. Because I'm guessing that their business plans are going to change a lot. Whether that means they're going to be making more money or less money given their authorized, their authorizations, I'm not sure. So I'm leaning more towards sticking with the 5 years, but I'm not, I'm definitely not 10 years, but I'm waffling with the 7.
This is Anne Marie Cuneo, if I can just jump in. You know, we hadn't really thought of that, but that is potentially something that we could work out, is a 5-year cycle with a potential for a waiver of up to 2 years or 5 years after if they could prove certain things. I mean, if the FCC hasn't moved anything potentially, I mean, Gabrielle, what do you think about that?
Ms. Cunningham?
Yeah.
Actually, you're sort of taking the words out of my mouth. You know, we have that language for the water companies every 3 years, but they can come in and request a waiver. I'm wondering if that might not be appropriate for these folks as well, every 5 years. But then have a very specific time frame that they have to come in prior to that 5-year period, ask for the waiver. And we can take a look at on sort of a case-by-case basis at that stage.
The only issue I see is that this isn't they have to come in every 5 years. This is if you want to avail yourself of the simplified letter of advice process, then you have to come in for every 5 years. But I'm just trying to think on the fly here. I think we probably could still even build a waiver process into that. If your 5 years is up, instead of, you could file your letter of advice with a waiver asking for a 2-year stay on filing the rate case or 1 year at a time or something to that effect, to allow them to get another couple of letter of advices in if they felt like, if they could prove certain things, like if they gave us some calculations that their ROE was, at least from a upper level, that they weren't over-earning or something to that effect. So,
Yeah, I would suggest maybe a 2-year waiver, and then they could ask for it one more time. But if they hit 10 years, that it's automatically they have to come in.
if they want to avail themselves of the letter of advice.
Right. So you could have two possible waivers, and then at 10, it's automatically coming. But at least at that 5-year and 7-year, or 6-year and 8-year, the commission would still have the ability to look at it and decide whether or not, no, we think it's time for you to come in, or yes, it's all right, go ahead and we'll just do the simplified process this time. That would be my suggestion.
I think we could draw some language to try that.
But that depends on the other 2 commissioners.
My recommendation is to take our feedback today, work with industry, and come up with a compromise. I think it's really challenging at the state level to second guess what's happening on the federal level, particularly the FCC. So I know you're trying to think on the fly right now, but I think you have some good suggestions for us, and you know, we want some flexibility for these folks. I'm okay with 7 years. But let's kind of think it through process-wise and work with them and get their ideas on it. They may have some concerns raised by that, or just mechanics. So I don't have any. My only recommendation is to take what we're discussing today and work some magic on it and figure it out.
And I would agree with Commissioner Wagner to give you the flexibility to review it, talk with NTA, and then come up with a compromise if you think a compromise is appropriate.
Well, I'm going to make that 3. I hate to hamper Mr. Wheeler any more than we have to, because we don't know what she's going to. People are going to throw at her when she leaves here. So I think maybe some general direction would be helpful. I think 10 years is too long. But I do think 5 years is a nice bright line. However, small carriers do have some, some resource issues. I think we have to be very cognizant of. So thoughts about, pushing it out to 7 with or without a waiver provision, I'm fine with. But I think that kind of general direction is probably sufficient to give staff enough flexibility to kind of work with industry.
Okay, we'll do that.
Do I need to have any kind of motions going?
No, I think you've opted to just provide general feedback here, is that correct?
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I believe I'm up now. Just quickly, one other bill, Senate Bill 15, was before the Senate Commerce, Labor, and Energy Committee yesterday, and they voted to do pass, so it should be moving over to the Assembly side soon. SB93, as Ms. Cohen mentioned, is before the Senate Commerce, Labor, and Energy Committee. It was scheduled to be heard yesterday at the committee meeting, but was withdrawn. I'm not sure when it'll come back before the committee, but just briefly on that bill, what the language does is increases the rate cycle for utilities from 36 months to 60 months, 3 years to 5 years. And that would have two effects. One, that effect, increasing the rate cycle to 5 years. The second would be to most immediately skip Sierra Pacific's upcoming rate case, which is due to be filed this summer, and that would put that off for 2 years till 2015. It's our understanding that some of the basis of the bill is to avoid essentially 3 filings within the next year, having to file 3 filings within the next year. Those would be Sierra's rate case this summer, and then having to file, and the merger filing, which is expected to be filed this summer, and then followed by a combined rate case in the summer of 2014. So I believe the intent is to reduce that down to 2 filings by removing the Sierra filing this summer. The Electric Internal Commission group discussed a number of issues concerning this bill, and we were prepared to testify yesterday if needed in a neutral manner. And in addition, Ms. Cuneo has identified at least a concern about potential costs to staff in processing a large combined rate case in the summer of 2014. And myself and Ms. Cuneo can go into those identified issues and the cost issues if you'd like.
That would be great. Go ahead, Ms. Cuneo, Mr. Limahl.
I'll go ahead and give a high-level view of the issues that we identified with the bill, and then have Ms. Cuneo identify the issues with staff, manpower issues. One issue is that if Sierra's rate case were delayed, there is a depreciation issue that was reserved for this upcoming filing from Sierra's last filing, docket number 10-06003 and 10-06004. The order in that docket took into consideration positions of staff and BCP regarding depreciation reserve and depreciation calculation issues, and a depreciation study was ordered to be filed with the Sierra filing this summer. So that's an issue that was supposed to be heard in the upcoming filing. Regarding cost of debt, as is known, interest rates are fairly low right now. That could portend a lower cost of debt for the utility, which could translate to lower rates. And that, again, could cross over into ROE as well. Smart meter issues. It's possible that the utility could include in the Sierra filing this summer the smart meter savings. We don't know what those savings are exactly at this point, but the expenses and savings associated with smart meters could be included in the upcoming Sierra filing. There are, another issue are ESM amortizations. There are some outstanding balances for Nevada Power DSM periods 1 and 2 are still out there, as well as Sierra's period 4 balance. So those would have to be taken up. And then there are numerous issues with the merger. If there wasn't recent data from rate cases prior to a merger filing, there's potential that the Commission does not have an accurate baseline to judge the merger by. If the merger were approved and a combined rate case were filed in 2014, that rate case would likely include essentially 3 rate cases, Sierra Pacific, Nevada Power, and a reconciled combined rate case. And that would cause, potentially cause some difficulties for staff and the commission to process essentially 3 large rate cases within 210 days. And there is a manpower issue that staff has identified. I'll turn it over to you, Studio.
Okay, thank you. And a little bit more specifically with respect to the depreciation issues, with the way that Senate Bill 93 is written, if our depreciation schedules, our depreciation cases are every 3 years. So currently, or sorry, every 6 years. So then currently with our GRC cycles every 3, they sync up every other case. With a 5-year GRC cycle and a depreciation cycle of 6, they'll sync up once every 30 years, which is certainly not ideal in order to set appropriate rates for customers. So that's just looking at just the plain language of SB 93, that's a bit of an issue.
And if I could, just so on that point, it would be likely that the commission would have to hold a rulemaking to align our regs on depreciation studies with the rate case cycle.
Right, and likely we would have to do them each with a 5-year cycle. I doubt that we would do a depreciation over 10. We would probably have to do it each time. And so from a cost perspective, that would mean that we would need to hire a depreciation expert. Right now, the staff currently uses a consultant to provide our depreciation services. So instead of hiring one every 6 years, we would hire one every 5. So a slight difference in costs for the commission in that respect. With respect to the merger issues, and again, this is, I'm not sure Mr. Lamojo quite drove it in the point, but SB 93 currently, as it's written, just allows 5 years between rate cases, which, as the way it is, not making any assumptions about anything, that would mean Sierra's rate case gets moved from this June to potentially no later than June of 2015, and Nevada Power's case gets moved from June of 2014 out to June of 2016, absent any other case. It is our understanding, though, and oddly enough, this is the one hearing or agenda where there's not an NV Energy personnel around.
Yeah.
I made that observation. Maybe they're in Las Vegas.
It is our understanding that the intent, pardon?
We have one
No one?
person from NV Energy.
Oh, okay, well, it was our, it was explained to staff that the intent of this was simply to remove the obligation for Sierra's general rate case for this year, and that next year, June of 2014, the commission would see a Sierra Pacific GRC, complete GRC, a Nevada Power complete GRC, and a combined joint companies GRC, all filed at the same time under the I think it would be under the assumption that the merger that they filed this June or July is approved. If that were the case, if that were approved, and if that cycle of filing were to be implemented, I just have to be honest, there's no way that we can prosecute 3 general rate cases essentially that involve every single customer and every single rate class across the state with our existing staffing and personnel, and we didn't budget for that kind of consultants. We did budget for some telecom consultants, and we did budget for depreciation for the existing schedules that we had planned for. But as a practical matter, there's no way that we can accommodate that kind of workload. And then, to be fair, with respect to the smart meter cost recovery, it is our understanding that Sierra would include some of the the smart meter cost recovery in this current GRC, but that's that would be offset by the smart meter savings, which I think they had estimated in their previous docket for Sierra at
approximately $5.9 million a year from docket number 10-02009. So the costs and the benefits would be in this rate case, this year rate case. Just from a practical level, it seems logical to understand where you are before you know where you're going. And without a rate case, an individual rate case for both Sierra and Nevada staff can understand what a joint company's synergies and operational, benefits would be without knowing where each of these are to begin with. So staff feels pretty strongly against the proposal to change the GRC timeframe to 5 years.
Questions or comments?
Oh, I have lots of comments. And I appreciate the analysis that you've put into this, because I didn't even think about what a nightmare it would be to process basically 3 rate cases as one in 210 days. I think that's a non-starter on that alone. My second issue is with the merger, and I have not been quiet about my concerns about a merger that has not been filed. We're proposing legislation based on something that has not been filed, nor has this commission ruled on, and it's a merger that is the company's choice. It's not required by FERC just because they're combining potentially their balancing authorities, assuming online is completed. It's merely a decision, a business decision on their part. And I'm disturbed by the fact that the company has not come to the commission to discuss this. There are significant implications to what they're proposing, well beyond just changing it out 5 years. And my understanding is that the rationale at the legislature has been it's some kind of savings for ratepayers, and I just flat out disagree with that. So my recommendations, without totally going on a rant, would be for NV Energy to withdraw this bill immediately. And when I'm being withdrawn, and there's no one here for me to lecture to, so I'll just stare at Chairman Burtonshaw on the screen, is that they withdraw it. And when I mean withdraw. I don't want to see this on, the last night of the legislature 2 minutes before he died. And I'm serious about that. I mean, after what we went through on 416, that type of behavior is inappropriate and unacceptable in my opinion. The second is for this commission to vigorously oppose this and make sure that we testify in opposition and providing all the rationale and reasons why this is a burden on our agency financially, it undermines our authority, and is bad for ratepayers. Finally, as a last option, and I mean last, try to amend it to create a framework that is more workable towards going towards a longer rate cycle, which, I haven't had the opportunity to weigh the pros and the cons of it. After seeing on several rate cases, I would prefer that we never have them, but that's not acceptable. 3 might be too short, 5 might be too long. But if we have to work on something, if it looks inevitable of passing, we need to make the best of it. We need to have a fiscal note on this, and we need to have language that we can support in terms of time frames, extended periods for reviewing rate cases, anything and everything. We'll have to have rulemakings. There's so much more that goes into this, and for us not to be even advised on this is just inexcusable, and I'm very, very disappointed by these antics. So I will stop with my rant at that.
Just from a policy standpoint, I think going from 3 to 5 years is not the way to go. You're going to have stale information. You're not going to be having the right price signals for the customers. You have a potential for rate shock, although the utility would probably come in earlier if they thought that they were bleeding out money. I think that like Commissioner Wagner said, you know, seems to be in anticipation of a merged company. I'd rather wait until after we go through that docket, see where everything is, and maybe the next session it might be worthwhile to evaluate whether 3 years is appropriate. But I just have reservations from the get-go going from 3 to 5. It's just so much changes in 3 years. I can't imagine even going to 5 years. And I think there's a lot of, I'd rather have them come in sooner and we get the numbers right, whether they're higher or lower, and rather than kicking the can down the road. And I think that's what this bill does. And then on top of that, you know, my understanding is that we were not asked for to produce a fiscal note. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so it would be an unsolicited fiscal note.
That is correct. There's an issue with the fiscal note and the unsolicited fiscal note, specifically because what's in SB 93 does not in and of itself generate a fiscal note. By changing the time frame, there's policy issues, the policy issues that we discussed, but I don't think that there's actually a fiscal issue unless you interpret SB 93 as was explained to staff by the power company. So there's a fine line there between an unsolicited fiscal note that actually sort of interprets SB 93 that isn't in the language.
But I guess my question might be for, you know, the language says one thing, but it also opens the door for the utility to do something else. And so in a fiscal note, do we need to anticipate that and provide that impact? Because by moving from 3 to 5 years, it opens the door for a three-headed GRC monster. And so I don't know how else to describe it. And so I would think that would be very important information if we're in a position to be providing information to the legislature to know that the potential consequences of legislation as proposed. This is a potential and actually a probably likely potential.
And I think you need to provide legislators, it's just like a proceeding here. We need to have facts before us, and if this is one of the consequences of it, and the implication on this agency is far too significant, I don't care if it falls within or without or creates an interpretation. I think it's one of those potentially unintended or intended consequences. So I think it's important that that information is conveyed, however you do it.
And I know there's a perception that this will reduce the work for the commission, and that the commission has a lot on its plate coming up this summer with the GRC and the potential merger application. I'd rather deal with it now and get to the bottom of all the issues, and so that we know where we are in 2014, especially next year at this time. Otherwise, like I said, we're kicking the can down the road, and I always hate when that was done in the past, and I would hate that we'd be doing that now.
And to address that note, actually staff this year is, we're actually fairly quiet. We're well prepared to take this year at GRC this summer, so I don't actually expect it to be causing any workload issues for this summer, so. Okay.
Ms. Cohen, do we need to have a motion?
I think you wanted to, it sounds as if Commissioner Wagner has stated her first objective. I think you need to vote on her second, which would be to take a position against the bill if it reemerges.
Okay. Well, let's see. So I would move that we take a position opposing the bill.
Second.
Concur.
All right, item 4B is brought to us by General Counsel. Or is there anything else on item 4A?
It doesn't look like there is from here.
Well, let me just ask, how much of an update do y'all want with respect to, we've gotten a few little requests from senators and assemblymen, some fairly minor. One was
a request from Assemblyman Daley to explain the process for the solar generations rebate program for schools. He's got some labor commissioner type issues, and so I've sent a draft out to Mr. Lamovo, who's looking that over right now. And then we had a request from Senator Kiefer at our budget meeting yesterday, who wanted the cost of the RPS essentially. So thankfully, Chairman Burtonshaw and our policy advisor Charez had already done a presentation on that. So we have that information. We're going to send that over to him. And last, during the hearing for SB41, Senator Settlemyre asked for a couple of figures with respect to number of Lifeline customers in the state, and we're going to get that over to him. So those have been the only requests for information that we have. And I just want to make a final comment. I think you guys are doing a really good job. It's been something that I've been involved in the entire time I've been on the commission and before, and I'm kind of really liking it. I was afraid I was going to have like some kind of strange separation anxiety, but now I feel like the weight of the world has been lifted from my shoulders. So thank you. You guys are doing a great job, and I appreciate it.
I would second that. I watched the 1:30 meeting of the Senate Commerce, Labor, and Energy Committee, and our guys did a great job. I think Commissioner Noble's suggestion we use the attorneys and sort of point people has worked out to our advantage, and they did us proud. Okay, item 4B is brought to us by General Counsel, Mr. Weir.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 4B is docket number 12 dash, is this on? Is docket number 12-10031, and that's the petition of Nevada Controls, LLC, requesting a declaratory order regarding interpretation and subsequent application of Nevada Administrative Code 701B 510. And in accordance with, and for the reasons outlined in the briefing memo before you, General Counsel recommends that the Commission issue an order in this docket directing Sierra Pacific Power Company, DBA NV Energy, to issue the balance of the full incentive amounts in accordance with the incentive assignment information and payee designations listed on the incentive claim forms for the wind energy systems identified in the petition. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Any questions or comments?
I have no questions.
I was wondering, who are the applicants for these? These are the subject of that Nevada Controls put the structures on.
It's my understanding that it's Andreola Farms, and the name listed on the other applications is J. Gandolfo.
And so they are benefiting by the production of electricity from these structures, is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And did they expend substantial monies in having those placed on their properties?
It's my understanding that they expended little to no resources, and that the developer actually incurred a loss on the projects.
You know, I voted against giving this money to Nevada Controls. However, I strongly believe that Nevada Controls, given the Commission's decision, is rightfully the one who should be paid this. I think that the arguments that these two applicants are making are frustrating, and in some ways I think unconscionable, that they think they're trying to get some sort of windfall of $600,000 in this instance. It's a demonstration program. To me, it's demonstrating that these applicants are not acting in good faith. That's my own personal opinion based on the facts that have been presented, and I will stop there.
Ms. Cohen, we have the notice on this. For possible discussion, action, adopt recommendations as filed or with modifications word issue. So we're not necessarily noticed to set this for further proceedings, correct?
No, this is to issue an order clarifying really the prior order that was in this.
To clarify, General Counsel's office feels that the prior order issued on December 12th, 2012, was clear in its direction, but this would clarify and just give specific guidance to NV Energy as the administrator of the program. And it basically just directing the company to comply with the process approved in the annual plan filings.
What time frame do we have to act on this petition?
Well, the petition actually was already granted, so this recommendation by General Counsel's office doesn't have a particular time limit. However, presumably in the absence of commission guidance, the incentives would remain unpaid, and the designated payee would, continue to have incurred that loss.
Chairman, if I could weigh in, I'm not sure what your concerns are, but having done the annual plans and with the drafter of the regulations, this is common practice, and as, by way of observation, Nevada Controls has been a solid player, and in fact one of the few that has helped make the water incentive program actually work. And looking at it from a practical, pragmatic, big picture perspective, I don't find it acceptable that they haven't been paid. It's a small company, they do good work, they've been a good player in this arena, and I'm disappointed that the company has taken this path. So I'm not sure what your concerns are, but I just wanted to vouch for the process and for Nevada Controls.
Perhaps I misunderstood the Commissioner Nobles' questions and Mr. Ware's responses. And my understanding from the question and the response was the money would not be paid to Nevada Controls, but to the applicants who had not spent any money.
No, that's incorrect. The money would be paid in accordance with the process adopted in the annual plans proceedings to the designated payee, or the name on the incentive assignment information that was provided in the incentive claim package, specifically on the incentive claim form for those projects. So in this case, it does appear to be based on the information provided to us, Nevada Controls, for each of those projects.
Chairman, I may not have been clear, but I'm in support of General Counsel's recommendation here.
Oh, okay.
I just had a problem with the applicants, and I think they were trying to get a windfall when they expended no monies in this project. And that was where my disappointment was being directed.
Okay, then
I apologize for not being clear.
Okay, I must have had a misunderstanding then. Alrighty, then let's go ahead and I move we approve General Counsel's recommendation to issue an order directing Sierra Pacific Power Company to issue the balance of the full incentive amounts in accordance with the incentive assignment information and payee designations listed on the incentive claim forms for the wind energy systems identified by Nevada Controls petition.
Second?
Concur.
Items 5A, 6A, and 6B are brought to us by regulatory operations staff and can be voted on without further comment unless any commissioner wants to pull one out for further consideration.
I'm being signaled that 5A.
5A is an oral briefing, with no action.
Okay, 5A is briefing with no action, so we need to pull that one out.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just vote on 6A and 6B then. I would move that the commission accept the recommendations contained in staff's briefing memos regarding items 6A and 6B and issue appropriate orders.
Second.
Concur.
Okay, 5A, Mr. Wilford.
Thanks, Chairman. It's been a while since we updated you on Wendover. Thank you for just letting us do an oral update here. It makes it a little easier. So it was a rough February. It was very cold. Well, January, February is very cold throughout the West, and Wendover really struggled. During the process of this cold snap, we had the city deliver under its police power approximately 46,000 gallons of propane to Wendover Gas. Ms. Green, for about 9,000 of those gallons, Ms. Green did cut them a check, and this was a recent load that she had gotten from them. She did cut them a check but she still owes the city of West Wendover for 4 loads, approximately 37,261 gallons, not approximately exactly. That's $46,106.32 without the interest calculations that she owes to the city of West Wendover right now. That's due April 1st. She did also get a load that was arranged by staff from Sierra Pacific. She has paid Sierra Pacific back. We've had confirmation of that, so that's been resolved. So during this process of this cold snap, we did work, Ms. Cuneo and Ms. Jackson worked, I think, with the governor's office to give the governor some information regarding waiver of CDL restrictions so that drivers could drive longer. That was a problem that several states were reacting to. They were waiving their restrictions on how many hours propane drivers could drive, such that they could have time to sit in the long lines to get propane and then also to drive it to their supplier. And there were supplier issues throughout the West. And Ms. Green's direct suppliers were having a lot of issues, even up until even up until we went to the court proceeding. It was the day after the court proceeding in late February or late January. I'm getting my months confused. We're in February now. Late January, the court proceeding, that was the day after that, the city had arranged the 8,973 gallon load for her because she couldn't get it from any of her suppliers. And the city had to get it from Turner, and Turner won't work with her, they only work with the city. So that's why she was able to cut a check that day for that load, but it had to come through the city's process. So in the process of all this going on, the judge asked us to come up here before him. Judge McGee and Elko and Mr. Bozier and I did go to that. The city was there, the city manager, the mayor, and their attorney, Mr. DeGrazia, as well as Ms. Green and her attorney and the receiver were on the phone, as well as Sierra Pacific. The judge has ordered us to come up with, by March 1st, a 10-day contingency of fuel or money in case of another extreme weather event. I'll note that Mr. Shute explained at the proceeding, Mr. Shute being the receiver, that in his opinion, there was no way this was happening again this year. It was an extreme weather event. It was the worst he'd seen in several years, maybe 10 years. And he didn't expect it to happen again. This 10-day contingency is a little problematic. The city operates to buy her gas under their police power in conjunction with advice from us that she needs the gas and she can't pay for it. So there is some problem from the city's perspective to come up with a contingency of money or fuel for her, because that wouldn't be, if she doesn't need it, they can't exercise their police power to do it. The judge did ask for us to look at some state money to cover the contingency. We haven't gotten that far yet to see if that's available. But we, travel and other stuff, we haven't really figured out if there is such a thing as any sort of emergency money. I think we'll at least give that a look, and we'll let them know if there's what we can do. Obviously, I explained to the judge that we don't have a police power here. the reason Sierra Pacific was able to supply a load was because of relationships. And, we'll have to figure out some way to get the judge some sort of answer by March 1st. I haven't been able to really circle with the city yet about what their thoughts are fully, or what the receiver's thoughts are about how we can come up with this contingency for another extreme weather event that might come this year. So the next piece of this is that the city is moving forward on voting on the feasibility study that's scheduled for next Tuesday, the 19th. It's still on the schedule. However, Mr. Melville told me this morning that the city of Wendover, Utah, who has the right of first refusal to buy the system, is now they're not, they want to change their contingencies to drop the right of first refusal, and they're not getting back with the city of West Wendover in a timely manner. So now, if Mr. Melville doesn't hear, or his attorney doesn't hear from the city of Wendover, Utah by tomorrow at noon, he will have to pull that feasibility study from the agenda and move it to the next agenda. I mean, it's a crucial piece of whether they vote to move forward. If there's any cost involved in getting that right of first refusal waived, the city needs to know that when they vote to move forward. So all those pieces, and then the final piece is I know that the BCB has been working very hard with Senator Gokachia on legislation that would perhaps allow them to have a bond for the pipeline that would run, not for buying the system, but for the pipeline that would run up to the Ruby. And I know that's moving forward in a good way, and they have some assembly support for that too. So that's the update I have for now, and obviously staff will closely watch the city's proceedings and how they vote, and I won't go into this because I don't want to, have any estimation of any other. I don't want to preach any prejudgment here, but we will watch that, and we will bring you something if need be. Staff will to the commission.
I have a couple questions. In representations to the court, did Mr. Shute, did he say that it was a supply issue, not a money issue, last month with regards to acquiring necessary gas?
I'm trying to recall specifically. I think he did paint it more as a supply issue and less as a monetary issue. Is that your recollection, Mr. Berger?
This is Tammy Grove. If you want, I can weigh in a little bit, I think. There was an email that Judge McGee sent around to a handful of people when he decided that he wanted to have us come and appear before him again. And in response to that email, Mr. Shute had responded to the judge and some people here on staff and to the city and other individuals that he didn't believe there was a money issue, that he believed that this was merely the supply issue that Mr. Williger touched on in terms of the drivers and the shortages and the cold snap. I then had a conversation with Mr. Shute that it was our understanding on staff, based on things that Ms. Green had said, that there was a financial issue. It was not merely the supply issue. And then he acknowledged that perhaps he did not have all of the facts. So there was a point at which Mr. Shute did indicate that, but it was not at the court hearing. It was via some email exchanges that we had.
And the reason why I bring that up, if the judge was told it was a supply issue, and what you, Mr. Royler, just said that Ms. Green still owes the city $46,000, that to me sounds like a money issue. And there might be some supply issues that compound the problems, but I'm wondering if the court is getting accurate information there.
Commissioner?
Yeah.
Let me, the initial email was sent to me, to clarify this. The judge sent it to me, and he copied all of the other parties. Mr. Shute responded about the supply issues. I then responded to the judge and explained to him that, yes, it was a combination of supply as well as money, but that the primary problem was money. So I did advise the court that the issue was monetary
Okay.
situation.
And I think Commissioner Noble, Mr. Willard can follow up on this, but that was prior to the court hearing. At the court hearing, I think they fleshed out more fully what had been occurring.
And I have another, what happens if CPC is revoked? And it just seems like there's a reliability and safety issue here. And I'm just hypothetically wondering why we're still dealing with Ms. Green.
That's a fair question, and staff recognizes that as the investigative arm of this commission, that it's our job to look at that and to bring that to your attention, and we will. I think there's a balance that's happening here. We're trying to see how far the proceedings go with the, how far the sale goes with the city before we step in. I think the worst of the winter, knock on wood, is over, and from staff's estimation, and I only say from staff's estimation, I think that we don't want to see this go on another winter, even if that means there has to be 300 tanks set, but I would rather leave that for a proceeding where you all can, when everybody's noticed, to talk about that, so, all right.
And the reason why I bring this up, it seems like I know that the safety of all those customers, and it's not just an inconvenience, it's the true safety of these customers. When it's a high of 18, that's the max it gets for 30 days. There are serious life and death issues, I think, if they don't have heat. And so I would, like I said, I hope there's a resolution before fall. But to me, this is just, it's gone on way too long, and it would be nice if the powers that be in Wendover do something about it, but if they're not, I guess it's back to the commission to do something. But also, I'm wondering what the judge has ordered, whether that's even physically and legally possible to do. Because I know it's trying to think outside the box, and I'm sure the intentions are good, but I don't know if it's even possible. So that's an observation.
This is Mr. Bozier. Can I weigh in on the financial issue that you raised? That was discussed at the January 30th hearing. I did explain to the court, and I'll tell you what I told him, which was, this really is a financial issue, largely a financial issue. I agree with Mr. Noble that it was compounded by these supply issues, but the financial issue is there. Typically, most businesses have short-term credit arrangements with banks to help smooth over these types of periods. Ms. Green has no short-term credit. So really what's happening here is the city of West Wendover and Nevada Energy are kind of stepping into the shoes of a bank. Where she would normally get a loan from a bank on a short-term basis to buy these folks are stepping in and providing the gas for her. So they're really stepping into the shoes of what would normally be a short-term creditor. But that's because she has no one to lend her that kind of money. Our biggest utilities have short-term facilities to do the same thing with their ebbs and flows of cash during the year. But she just doesn't have that available. And I did explain that to the court.
And Commissioner Noble, I'm sorry, Chairman, if I can weigh in one more time, this is Tammy Cordova, to the concern that you raised. That is something that we have spent a great deal of time on staff discussing as of late, over the past couple of months, is the safety issues that are out there in Wendover. It is staff's belief that the city of Wendover would necessarily be part of the solution. And I will say, at least for myself, my recent experience is that they have been working constructively with the various entities involved to find a solution. Staff has recently indicated to the city that, and I'll be quite frank, that our patience on staff is wearing very thin because frankly, we don't necessarily have the authority to do some of the things that we've been doing, but we've been doing them because that we recognize that there's a safety issue, and that we really believe that that responsibility belongs quite squarely with some of the individuals that live in Wendover. And so I think that you will find that if there is not a solution that the court can find or that the receiver can find, that you will see something from your staff asking the commission to find a solution. It is not the regulatory operations staff intention to do this for another winter. And for the commission to act, it takes months and months, and we recognize that. So we have had some very serious conversations, but we have been working quite constructively and cooperatively with the city of Wendover, Nevada, and I do want to thank them for that.
All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Wilker, what is West Wendover doing now? Or not doing, as the case may be?
They are looking into the feasibility study. I know Mr. Bozier got some emails today from someone who's doing some due diligence about other propane prices throughout the state, and I had responded to that, I don't know, do you want to fully describe that?
And this is West Wendover, the folks who have the right of first refusal?
No, I'm sorry. Were you asking what Wendover, Utah is doing?
Yeah, I'm wondering
Or
what they're doing to
what-
lock down the process here.
Well, there's this, what's called an interlocal agreement that they had entered into, some sort of draft interlocal agreement months ago about that right of first refusal and how Wendover, Utah, the concessions that West Wendover would get to Wendover, Utah in order for Wendover, Utah to waive the right of first refusal. But it was just a draft agreement, and they needed Wendover, Utah to act on that, and such that it could be part of the package that the city manager takes to the city council and the mayor when it votes to move forward with the feasibility study. And my understanding is that interlocal agreement is they're just not responding. They're not. They said they might want some changes. They're not responding. They're not getting back with the city manager or the city attorney. I didn't have a chance to talk with Mr. Crockett. I know Mr. Crockett was working this very hard. Mr. Crockett being Ms. Green's attorney, and I hadn't had a chance to speak with him to see where he thought it stood. So, but it's all tied up in this process.
So, February 19th may not go forward.
That's right. That's what Mr. Melville told me today, this morning.
Well, I'm going to try to refrain from saying it's on my mind. Thank you, Mr. Wilder.
Yes.
All right, were there any other questions?
My only comment is I really appreciate the work you're doing. Staff degree, or Mr. Williger, you're doing a good job, and thanks for the update. And it's complicated, and I appreciate the time and effort you're putting into it. And I really wish the chairman would speak their minds, because it would be fun.
Oh. Yeah, I'd have to go back to the house and take some more blood pressure medication. Okay, item